Welcome back to Paul's Tech News. Let's be real, my friends. Everybody in the world, we presume as Americans, everybody in the world was partying their asses off this week to celebrate the blessed birthday of the United States of America. And therefore, it is reasonable to infer that there were probably no tech news-worthy occurrences that occurred, unless it was Jensen Huang challenging Lisa Su to a keg race and barbecue contest while draped in the stars and stripes singing God Bless America, which didn't actually happen despite how realistic Joe's recreation here is. But we might also presume that due to the general post-4th of July hangover, some regular weekly activities, such as tech news, might be canceled or delayed. And we would be mostly dead wrong, which is slightly alive, because I'm only kind of hungover and tech news.
Excellent!
Today's video is brought to you by the Corsair K65 Plus wireless RGB keyboard, featuring silky smooth pre-lubricated Corsair MLX red mechanical switches, 2 layers of sound dampening for softened typing acoustics, AES encrypted connectivity via low latency 2.4 GHz wireless, Bluetooth or USB wired, a multi-purpose rotary dial with function key combos and shortcut commands, resilient PBT dye sublimated keycaps, and of course, per key RGB lighting effects, which are endlessly customizable in Corsair's IQ software. For more on the Corsair K65 Plus, click the sponsor link in the video description. Okay, for real though, I have a limited amount of time before a tractor will be in operation very close to my recording area here, so we're doing the whole show tech briefs style for maximum efficiency. And yes, I will be driving the tractor for some of the time, and yes, there will be a video, but back to tech news. Memory maker Micron made some massive claims about how much better their new GDDR7 memory is in an article published this week, saying it's expected to achieve greater than 30% improvement in frames per second for ray tracing and rasterization workloads. Now that's a pretty big generational boost, and while it's not clear what specific platform or game engine Micron used to achieve these results, if the next story I'll be talking about is any indication, faster memory with more bandwidth, 1.5 terabytes per second on a 384-bit bus in GDDR7's case, will be crucial for unlocking next-gen GPU potential. GDDR7 is expected to be the memory used for NVIDIA's RTX 50 series of GPUs, which is still rumored to be launching later this year, but the catch here is that Micron is talking about GDDR7's improved performance at its maximum potential bandwidth, but that will likely only apply to the top-end GPU or GPUs, which is not what most gamers will be working with. NVIDIA, and eventually AMD, will undoubtedly trim the bus width for lower tier cards, which makes sense to a certain extent of course, but they always end up taking that too far. Speaking of taking things too far, the overclocking team at Tech Lab, hailing from Brazil, took an RTX 4090 about as far as anyone has before in a live stream on Monday. Given that NVIDIA has stingily refused to come out with an RTX 4090 Super, or 4090 Ti for that matter, Tech Lab went and made one their damn selves, Frankensteining an RTX 4090 GPU onto the PCB of a Galax Hall of Fame RTX 3090 Ti, then adding the finishing touch of the fastest GDDR6X memory currently available, 23 gigabits per second modules borrowed from an RTX 4080 Super. The result was a 39% higher score than stock in Superposition 8K, and notably they also tested just the memory speed boost alone, going from 21 gigabits per second to 26 gigabits per second, which pushed the score up 13% by itself. Now please, NVIDIA, launch the RTX 50 series. These 4090 mods are starting to get dangerous. Speaking of looming danger, we have further reports this week of tech companies being intentionally duplicitous when it comes to after-sale support of GPUs, laptops, and other PC hardware. Asus, is that you? No, actually, it's not. This time, in the interminable rotating crapshoot of which tech company sucks this week, it's AsRock, Gigabyte, and Zotac, who were warned by the United States FTC that they are stepping over the line when it comes to Magnuson-Moss Warranty Act violations. Specifically, this relates to those damnable little stickers that companies like to slap on vital assembly screws that say warranty void if removed or tampered with or whatever. In case you didn't know, those stickers are not legitimate, and in fact, that practice violates the Magnuson-Moss Warranty Act, as does written text in the warranty policy stating that removing the sticker voids your warranty. They can't even state or imply that you must have products repaired via an authorized service from the company. So there, AsRock, Gigabyte, and Zotac, you guys had better stop that nonsense, or I foresee an hour-plus long Gamers Nexus expose in your future. We wouldn't want that, would we? Speaking of hours-long GN videos, or about 36 minutes in this case, Steve and team were among the first to review a new cooler that has been anticipated for a very, very, very long time. The Noctua NH-D15 G2, Team Tan and Brown's revamped flagship that debuts alongside their new NF A14 X25R G2 round frame 140mm fans. So is it better than the old version? Yes, a bit. Typically 1 to 3 degrees cooler than the OG NH-D15, while remaining ahead of the other air coolers tested in terms of acoustics and performance. But the main issue for Noctua is the pricing. At $150, or $40 each for just those 140mm fans, it's difficult to justify the value proposition given how competitive the CPU cooling market has become. Considering that Thermalright's Phantom Spirit, which wasn't included in the GN testing by the way, costs about as much as one of the new Noctua fans by itself, Noctua either needs to rethink the pricing or let the NH-D15 G2 remain a super premium product that commands a much higher price for only marginally better performance. AMD's Fidelity FX Super Resolution, or FSR, version 3.1 came out last week and has now been tested, and like the NH-D15 G2, it is better than its predecessor. It's still not on par with NVIDIA's DLSS in terms of image quality per Tim of Hardware Unboxed, who did a very thorough analysis on Thursday, but they've improved a lot of the shimmering and artifacting issues from the previous version, while also adding frame generation. Ghosting, unfortunately, remains a nagging issue, although it's also not as bad as before, and while NVIDIA GPU users will likely opt to stick with DLSS, AMD Radeon gamers can now leverage either FSR 3.1 or Intel's XeSS, which each have situational advantages depending on the title being played, the GPU in use, and the resolution. Rounding out this shorter than usual episode of Tech News, we have the dawn of a glorious new day for communication between various peoples of the world, but most specifically people in the US who choose to ostracize or cut contact with former friends or loved ones simply because of the color of their text bubbles. Apple is finally adding RCS, or Rich Communication Services, support to iPhones with iOS version 18, and while it won't change the color of Android users' text bubbles, it will allow for modern texting features between Apple and non-Apple devices that most people take for granted, such as sharing high-quality images, getting read receipts, and seeing typing indicators. If you're not from the US, you might wonder why we don't just use WhatsApp or some other third-party service, but trust me, this is a much better solution than trying to convince several generations of young people to change their texting habits. And now, the healing process can begin. Just as we might also begin the end of this video. There you have it, guys. Tech news for the week. And if you liked it, click that like button or leave me a comment down below. While you're down there, all the articles I talked about today are linked in the video's description if you're interested. And you can check out my store at paulshardware.net for high quality merchandise, t-shirts, hoodies, beer sets, and more. Subscribing to my channel is always a good call too. Thanks again, everyone, and we'll see you next week.